evening, everyone, and welcome to the Chelmsford Business Association sponsored Candidates Night tonight. I want to thank the candidates for coming and participating as a very important evening. And I want to thank you all in the audience, both live audience and from your homes, for participating tonight. I want to introduce myself. I'm the new president of the Chelmsford Business Association. And I want to thank Doug Hausler, who will be our moderator tonight. Most of you know Doug. Doug is a local attorney here in Chelmsford, and he and his wonderful wife have been raising their great kids here in town. And have a good evening, and I know this will be well worth your while. Thanks.
Welcome to the annual Candidates Night sponsored by the Chelmsford Business Association. We're glad you're here. We are broadcasting live this evening from the Chelmsford Radisson Hotel at 10 Independence Drive. And initially, we want to thank Chelmsford Telemedia for all of its efforts to make this production possible. We also want to thank our guests, candidates for the selectmen positions, the press, and our viewers, both present and those at home, for participating in our program. Tonight, we only have one program focused on the selectman race. We will have 3 candidates seeking election to 2 seats on the Board of Selectmen. The format for our program will be substantially the same as we've used in past years. Each candidate has provided us a short biographical introduction. After reading their introductions, we will begin asking questions of the candidates. Throughout the evening, each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question. And as we end each portion of the program, each candidate will be allowed to make a closing statement not to exceed 1 minute. The questions have largely been prepared in advance tonight by the Chelmsford Business Association Candidate Nights Committee, but we also have opportunities to take questions from the audience who are present. Those questions will be collected by either Rick Romano or Tom Boucher, members of our Business Association Committee. So if anybody has questions, please get their attention. They'll be happy to pick those up. The questions will be reviewed by our committee to make sure that they are fair questions, that they're not tilted, biased as to for or against any one candidate. Each candidate will also have the opportunity to question each other. We've asked each candidate to prepare for 2 questions, one to each of their competitors. As moderator, I have the committee has given me the discretion to interrupt the candidate if we believe that the answer isn't very responsive to the question that's being asked, and I will try to rephrase it or, quite frankly, directly ask them to answer the question, not what they want to say. We ask the audience to please refrain from any table conversation during the night of the program, so as not to distract the candidates. It's hard being up here with a live camera and with a lot of people here. We want to keep them as focused as they can on the issues that they're addressing. And so besides table conversation being low, we want to make sure that it's important that the candidates get their position known throughout the community. This is broadcast live, but it's also being taped so that it can be replayed over the next 4 weeks or so. We ask that you withhold any applause to any particular questions or candidate until the end, when all of the candidates have completed with their closing statements. We'll thank them at that time. So for the selectmen, there are 2 positions open with 3 candidates: Pat Wojcik, Glenn Diggs, and Sandy Martinez. At this time, I'll read each of the introductions that they have provided to us in advance. For Pat Wojcik grew up in Chelmsford and attended Chelmsford Public Schools, graduating from Chelmsford High School in 1970. She received her bachelor's degree in economics from the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, where she was commissioned as an Air Force officer through the university's ROTC program. After being discharged from active duty, Pat earned an MBA from the University of Central Oklahoma. Pat has served 1 term on the Board of Library Trustees before first being elected to the Board of Selectmen in 2007. She was selected by her colleagues as chairman for 1 year. She has also served several terms as a town meeting member for Precinct 5. Pat also serves as the Vice Chairman of the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments, NEMCOG, and is Director of the Chelmsford Military Community Covenant Task Force. She was also recently elected as President of the Chelmsford Friends of the Library. For Glenn Diggs. Glenn has been a resident of Chelmsford since 1998. He grew up in Somerville and has resided in Medford, Billerica, Plymouth, Westford, and Wilmington. He graduated from Somerville High School in 1965 and with honors from Northeastern University in 1970 with a Bachelor's of Science in Management. He and his wife, Valerie, a Chelmsford resident since 1981, share 7 children, 4 of which graduated from Chelmsford High School. For 4 decades, Glenn has been a respected sales and sales management executive working locally, nationally, and internationally. He has received numerous awards for his business achievements. Glenn is currently employed selling parking access and revenue control systems. Glenn has actively attended Chelmsford's school committee, finance committee, board of selectmen, and town meetings. He has spoken during many public input sessions at these meetings. He has spoken during, in preparation for his candidacy, he's been attending many of the town's other committee and board meetings. He's reached out to town officials and members of the community in an effort to increase his understanding of Chelmsford. Our third candidate is Sandy Martinez. Sandy is an active community volunteer and small business owner. She has served as a Republican State Committeewoman for 8 years, a town meeting representative for 9 years, youth soccer board member for 11 years, and serves on the Community Preservation Committee. She's been married for 34 years and is a Blue Star mother and Bedford Veterans Administration Hospital liaison. Sandy was born in Waltham, raised in Chelmsford, and graduated from Chelmsford High School, as did her 4 children. She's been endorsed by Citizens for Limited Taxation for her positions on fiscal responsibility. Like Sandy, all 3 are asking for one of your 2 votes. Come on Tuesday, April 5th. Our first question tonight, and we will rotate, and the first one will be answered in this time by Sandy, followed by Glenn, and then Pat. What specific issues motivated you to run, and how do you plan to address those specific issues if elected? Sandy?
I think the most important issue, excuse me, that prompted me to run was taxes. Taxes has always been a huge issue for me, and I felt like the taxes in town were just getting out of control a little bit, and people were complaining about them. As a selectman, I hope to find ways to bring in other revenues so we don't have to tax the residents quite so much.
Thank you, Sandy. Glenn?
First, let me thank the Chelmsford Business Association for providing this forum. The reason that I decided to run was going to the various boards and committee meetings. I found that there seemed to be one thread in common, and that was a need for additional revenue. That Chelmsford does an outstanding job with the revenue we have. We are forced to accept mandates by the state, and our portion of additional revenue from the state has been basically fixed, and therefore I decided that we need to move forward with a stronger economy in town and focusing on economic development.
Thank you, Glenn. Pat?
Well, as I'm sure all of you know, I ran for selectman a year ago, and I was not successful in being reelected. And since that time, one of the things that I've noticed that I missed most about being on the board was the interaction with members of the community, helping them out to find ways to get things done, solving problems for them, getting answers for them. So I think that's one of the main reasons that I decided to run again and try to get on the board again. I feel like I am accessible, I'm responsive. I do my best to answer questions, to help people get through things that they need to do, and that's what I would continue to do if I were back on the board. Thank you.
Our second question tonight will be answered first by Glenn, and then by Pat, and then Sandy. What makes you more qualified than your opponents to be elected for this position?
I think the primary reasons are my basic demeanor and makeup. I've always had keen vision in terms of looking at, focusing on the big picture rather than getting tied up in the minutia that kind of comes along the way. I persevere. I'm never losing sight of the goal, even though sometimes it gets obscure. I'm open, always willing to listen to opposing arguments and trying to make them part of a general consensus. I'm a problem solver. I have an understanding that the best solution is usually a collaborative one rather than one that you make yourself. Transparency and sharing. Making success is the team goal, not necessarily your own goal. And I have vast management experience, including at the vice presidential level, in working consensus and working with groups to come up with a common, acceptable, best solution.
Okay. Pat, please.
As far as comparing myself to the other two candidates up here, I think that's for the voters to decide, so I'm not going to tell you that, you know, one of our philosophies is better or worse than another. I feel like I have some experience being on the board, and I have worked with colleagues on the board to launch new initiatives in town that have continued to this day. I feel like I work well with other members, you know, in the board setting like that. To reach some kind of consensus. If you're going to have 5 members of the board, you want them to represent the community, to be diverse. So I feel like I can collaborate with them and kind of a lot of the things that Glenn just said. A team player, that's what you want on a member of the Board of Selectmen.
Sandy, what makes you more qualified than your opponents to be elected for the position?
Well, I don't like to use the term more qualified because I think hopefully each and every one of us is qualified to serve as selectmen. My background is very different from everyone else here. I worked in IT as a consultant to many, many companies throughout the state of Massachusetts and up in New Hampshire as well. Problem solving. When you get into the IT world and the computer goes down, somebody has to figure out what made it go. And I'm a digger, I'm a problem solver, and I look for unique solutions when problems arise. I've looked at that my whole life in my budgeting at home, in raising my children, just finding ways to solve problems that save money and don't cost a lot.
Thank you, all candidates, for your responses. This question, Pat, you'll begin, and we'll pass over to Sandy and then Glenn. If elected, one of your responsibilities as a selectman is to participate in a review of the performance of the town manager. Based on your observations and knowledge to date, how would you rate his performance as of today? And what, if any, areas of improvement do you think Mr. Cohen should focus on? We're all human. We all can get better. So, Pat, how do you respond to that?
I have had the privilege of doing a performance evaluation of the town manager several times. I think he does a wonderful job. I think he's well respected, not just in this region, he's respected across the state for how well he manages the town of Chelmsford in all respects, you know, as far as the budget, as far as economic development. I mean, pick one, as far as, you know, insurance, going out and getting different bids for different types of insurance for the employees. So I've always given him high marks. I think he hires good people to work for him. He has a good staff. There's loyalty that goes both ways, which I think is critical in an environment in which he works. So I've given him high marks before, and I'm sure I would continue to do that in the future.
If I may follow up, though, Pat, you answered half that question, but we haven't addressed the improvement area.
Well, as you said, everybody can improve. One of the things that I hear about Paul is that he tends to be defensive at times when, you know, somebody challenges him. So perhaps he could work on that. He is a good communicator. He's definitely improved in that regard from when he first came on board. So I have seen definite improvement in the way Paul performs his job in the times that I have since I've been working with him.
Thank you. Sandy, your opportunity.
Well, I've never worked with Paul, as Pat has. However, I've been interacting with him in a lot of areas lately, especially running for selectman. I've gone to him with questions about the town, questions about things I don't have a lot of knowledge about, and he's always been open and honest with me. He's very personable, and I also see in the whole town hall, in all the offices where I go, all the people there are polite, courteous, helpful. There's a nice demeanor and tone to the whole town department. And I think that reflects on his management and how he treats his employees and how he interacts with them. And I give him kudos for that, because it's always a pleasant experience in going to town hall, especially the town clerk's office.
And the second element of the question, what areas does he need improvement in your opinion?
That's a hard one, because I don't interact with him in an everyday way that affects our relationship. Sorry. I would say that maybe communication, letting people know a little bit more in advance of things when things are about to happen, so that they're not caught by surprise, perhaps.
Okay.
The taxpayers, especially.
Thank you. Glenn?
I feel that Paul does an excellent job. He's increased the stabilization fund during his tenure from roughly $1 million, I think, to $8 million. He's increased the bond ratings dramatically. He's always prepared to speak on any topic, on any particular part of law relating to the town operation. He has excellent managerial skills, and as Pat said, he has an excellent pick of staff who work very hard. From a standpoint of something he could do better, I think his only flaw is that he wants to do it all, and he gives up enormous amounts of time that I think he would be served well if the town could come up and provide him an additional help that focuses on economic development, that works hand in hand with them. I think that that extra pair of hands would serve him well to go out to find additional revenue sources for the town.
Thank you. This question, we're going to ask Sandy to lead us off. What 2 or 3 votes taken by the Board of Selectmen in the last 3 years do you think the board may have gotten it wrong or had the wrong outcome? Why do you think that those decisions were perhaps incorrect or not well thought out?
Honestly, I can't think of any right now at this moment where I feel that they've done it inappropriate or voted wrong.
So right now, as you sit here, there's no particular
Nothing that's
issue
coming
or
to mind.
Nothing comes to mind that you think the board might have missed something? Okay, that's fine. Glenn, it's your opportunity.
I only have one, and that was the acquisition of 101 Mill Road. You know, certainly unquestionably it's a beautiful site, but I think that when the Board of Selectmen recommended that it be purchased, they were probably thinking a little bit more with their heart than with their head. It's an odd site. The rooms there are cut up. There was speculation that there were water problems. There is still no consensus on what to do with it. There was a tremendous amount of money, close to $500,000. It may have been better that the money was spent. The school department had some extra money. Maybe putting it together, they could have got all-day kindergarten launched. So that's basically the only one that I really had a disagreement with.
All right. Pat?
Probably the main one that I think the board, I'd like the board to go back and revote would be the vote on whether to join a regional emergency call center. I think that is something that would help not just the community, it would help the employees that work in dispatch at the police station. We would upgrade technology, we'd upgrade training, we'd have better facilities. So all around, I think it would be beneficial to the community. Plus, it would save some amount of money. It's debatable exactly how much, but it would be a money saver for the town. So that's one vote that if I were on the board, I think that it would have come out differently. If there's one other one, I guess it would be that one of the recommendations for the budget at the last town meeting, I believe it was 3-2, not to recommend the town manager's budget. And I think it was based on a philosophical disagreement about how the budget was actually balanced.
Thank you, Pat. Here's the surprise question of the evening, as it has been for over 20-plus years when we've had this, which is that the CBA, of course, is going to ask you to respond to a question relating to your views on tax classification, something we hold very dear and close to our hearts. How have you studied the tax classification issue, and where do you stand? Do you support the current policy of one flat rate or not? And we'll begin with Glenn.
I don't believe there should be a dual rate. I think it should be a single rate. And it's based on the fact that we have such a small commercial percentage of our business, roughly anywhere from 17 to 20%, depending on who you talk to. If you were to do a dual tax rate, because it's such a small business base, it would make a negligible impact on the residential rate. Additionally, the businesses, if you're a hotel or if you're a restaurant, you're paying an extra 1% for an extra tax, which is amounted to a lot of money revenue for the town. And if we do go with a dual rate, normally towns that do that, it's only for businesses above a certain level, so that most of the businesses really wouldn't be involved in it anyway.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Pat, your position, please?
Okay, well, this is only the 6th time that I've answered this question, and I don't think my answer will change. The business community in Chelmsford has been, a great partner with the town. They're always there to help with different events that go on, and the 4th of July being probably the most prominent one, the parade that's always sponsored by the Chelmsford Business Association. As far as a tax rate, I think it should remain a single tax rate. Some people say that businesses, when they're looking for different communities on where to locate, that taxes are really, down the list as far as what they're looking for, as far as the criteria to where they want to locate. But even if you have that one issue that you're better than another community, that might be a tiebreaker in some situations. So I would definitely maintain just a single tax rate.
Thank you very much. Sandy, what's your views?
Single tax rate. I believe we should keep it, mainly because everybody I talk to agrees with that, for one thing. Secondly, I have friends that live in Billerica who has a split rate, and the residents aren't all that happy with it. They're not finding that their taxes are staying lower.
Well, those are 3 responses the association's going to very much enjoy hearing. And if necessary, remind you of. Our next question. We'll begin with Pat answering it this time. What do you see as the top 2 or 3 priorities or goals to be achieved by you if elected to the Board of Selectmen, and what was the criteria you used to make those your particular goals?
Well, I think it's difficult to try to guess what you might be called upon to vote on or to rule on or to try to accomplish when you're on the board. It's, like I said the other day, it's almost like the weather in New England, that every day the situation may change. A couple of things that have come up recently that I think are going to be critical over the next several years is, one, filling the office space that Kronos is going to be vacating in the next year and a half. That's going to be difficult to do. It's a lot of office space there, but I would work very hard with the community development director and the town manager and the chambers of commerce around here and the business association to get somebody to get probably several businesses to come and fill some of that space. If there's another one, it's the full-day kindergarten. Although the Board of Selectmen doesn't work directly with the school committee, there is the Bowley Pulpit, and there are tri-board meetings. We've been talking about full-day kindergarten for years and years and years, and once again, it's been put off from next year to the year after. So that's another one that I would like to see some progress made on.
Thank you, Pat. Sandy? What do you see as some of the top 2 or 3 priorities or goals you'd like to see achieved while a member of the board, if elected?
Well, right now, I have to agree with Pat that the biggest issue just hit us this week. I even brought the newspaper about Kronos leaving. And I met with someone in Town Hall today, Evan Molansky, and we were talking about it. Filling that's going to be very, very difficult, but he believes that it's going to happen very shortly. It's not going to take a long time. I jokingly suggested to him we should turn it into a hotel, because it's a beautiful building and it reminds me of one of the hotels in Waltham. I guess that's about it.
All right. Glenn, what do you see as some goals to be achieved?
I think that the manpower infrastructure needs to be strengthened. I would like to reintroduce the Leadership Council that was in Chelmsford previously. That would be a council that would be made up of the town manager, the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, the finance committee chairman, the chairman of the school committee. And because we really need economic development, there should also be the chairman of the planning board involved. Their goal would be to foster communication between the boards and help create a better understanding of the mission of each of the boards and allow these boards to work in one common direction rather than in different directions. At the same time, I would like to establish a committee or a study, not unlike that being done by the school department, but focused on economic development. It would be designed to take the town from roughly 19% to 25%. And it's time to have an open mind in relation to economic development as a town as a whole.
Thank you very much. The next question we're going to start with Sandy to answer, please. There is several prominent commercial properties, such as the Oddfellows building in Central Square, that appear to have been abandoned and which are not presently economically useful. The present owners have done nothing to redevelop that particular site for more than a decade. Should the Board of Selectmen use their eminent domain power to force property owners, just like the Oddfellows building, to renovate or redevelop such properties under threat of losing title to the properties? Do you agree with that? If not, why not? If so, why? Sandy?
My gut feel is, no, I don't agree with that. I don't think it's right ever for government to take over somebody's private property just because they're not maintaining it. I would look for other avenues to try to encourage the property owner to maintain it. My answer was simply no, I don't think it's right.
How would you encourage then the redevelopment of that property, which has been abandoned now for almost 15 years?
Provide an incentive to the property owner. If they put in something that meets the town's needs and they're a part of it, maybe they could have a plaque on it that would let everybody know how wonderful they were in donating it.
Okay, thank you very much. Glenn, how do you view that power of eminent domain in context with the redevelopment or forced redevelopment of property?
Well, first, no, I would not believe in taking it over. If it did, the town would then be responsible for the restoration, the insurance, the heat, everything else that goes forward with that property. However, I would make one exception, that is if that property became a danger to public safety, then I think the town would have no choice. I think that to try to force them is basically bringing them to light in terms of the public eye, identifying them, talking about them, and having various people look at what could be done to the property and making it part of a bigger scope as opposed to just an individual property.
Thank you very much. Pat?
Well, I'm going to make it unanimous as far as the eminent domain. I think eminent domain should be used only as a last resort and only to take property for some public use. So I would not advocate for eminent domain. I mean, as far as incentivizing the owners to do something with the property to revitalize it, I think as we make other improvements in Central Square, perhaps there'll be some peer pressure for them to do that. And my understanding is that within a few years, they will have other incentives to redevelop that, maybe put some housing in it, and maybe a nice restaurant or some other retail. And I think that would definitely improve the downtown. But by using other resources and by fixing up everything else around it, I think it would encourage them to step up to.
All right. I've been asking a fair number of questions. Now let's get the candidates to ask each other some questions and draw out differences between them if possible. You were each asked to prepare some questions for each other. So I'm going to start with Glenn and ask you to direct a question to either Pat or to Sandy.
All right. This would be directed toward Pat. What are your general feelings toward establishing an overlay district in the 129 corridor?
Well, that's an easy one. I would definitely be in favor of that. I think that's another one of those things that if a company is looking to relocate somewhere and they have their list of criteria, I think if there's some kind of amenities that are nearby, it would definitely show it would definitely bring that property to the top of the list rather than further down the list. So I think that's another tool that we can have in our toolbox in order to attract more business to that area. So I would definitely favor it.
All right. Pat, I'm going to ask you to direct a question to one of the two candidates.
Okay, my question will go to Glenn. Glenn, I know a lot of what you've been talking about has to do with finances for the town, and I'm sure you're aware that it's really town meeting that holds the purse strings in the town of Chelmsford, in basically any town. So I'm curious, I know you live in Precinct 2, and there's 4 openings as far as town meeting members in Precinct 2. I'm curious why you didn't decide to run for town meeting member at the same time you're running for the Board of Selectmen.
Well, first of all, in terms of why I didn't run for a precinct is that I assumed there would be a filling of the list of people who would run because I was focused on one thing. I thought it was best to concentrate on one priority as opposed to doing several.
All right, thank you. Sandy, you get to ask a question to one of the other candidates, please.
My question's to Pat. In your previous term as selectman, what would you say is your greatest accomplishment and your biggest disappointment?
Well, I'll start with the second one. The biggest disappointment is not getting reelected. I think my biggest accomplishments are working, as I mentioned earlier, working with colleagues on the board to launch new initiatives, to basically improve the community and to highlight, in one situation, the Greener Chelmsford initiative, which showcased local businesses that went above and beyond in environmental initiatives, and then the Chelmsford Military Community Covenant, which helps the military families in town with tasks and activities that perhaps they don't get any other way.
All right. Glenn, you get to ask another question. This time it should be directed to Sandy.
Sandy, as a long-term resident of Chelmsford, how do you feel about the change from the town from one of considerable open space to one of very little open space?
It's funny you should ask that. I've been talking about that a lot lately to different people. When I moved here as a child, there were like 9,000 residents in town, and there were farmlands everywhere. It was very bucolic and beautiful to grow up like that. I had been dismayed sometimes as I drive through parts of town that are very, very built up and overcongested, and it disappoints me.
Would that mean, if I could follow up with that, does that mean would be against new construction, further development of existing vacant parcels?
No.
Okay. Pat, you have a question that should be directed to Sandy, please.
Okay. Sandy, I think one thing you and I have probably both done a lot more than Glenn is to participate in forums like this, in debates. And I just wonder how you feel about, between now and the end of this month, we'll probably do this another 3 or 4 times with kind of the same people in the audience, sometimes the same questions, the same format with 60-second answers or less. How would you feel about if some of the other sponsors were to maybe join together and do a different type of format to allow more expansive answers to some of the questions we have, so the public gets to know each of us better than just sound bites?
Are you talking about making it more like a Lincoln-Reagan debate?
Not to that extent, but
Lincoln-Douglas, I meant, sorry.
Well, I mean, you can just answer however you want to answer the question.
I'm open to anything. I think whatever is best for the citizens to have a feel of where we stand on issues is what I want to present to them. And if this format is not working for some reason, if that's what you think, then I would be open to expanding it in another format with longer questions or however you want to do it, or however you would suggest that we do it.
All right, and I'll follow up now with Sandy. You have a chance to ask a question of Glenn.
Glenn, what would you say is your greatest strength as a candidate for selectman?
I think that my greatest strength is that I am, compared to the other candidates, I'm a relative newbie in town, although I've been here for roughly 18 years, that I don't come with any preconceived ideas, nothing that precludes me from looking at the big picture, taking things and looking at them and evaluating from the merits. That going to the various committees and finding that there were some very bright, very talented, very dedicated people and that I think ferreting them out and bringing them to light that maybe they haven't seen before would help everybody in town.
Thank you very much, Glenn, for the answer. I'd like to raise a point that came up in one of the answers about the questions of the format of this forum and other forums to follow. And that's always subject to a review every year by our association. And I don't want anybody in the audience or the candidates to think that just because we've done it this way, we have to continue to do it in this format. But what we do want to point out, and that has always been our goal, is that we are one of the very, very first forums that allow the candidates to distinguish themselves amongst each other. And it was our hope from the outset that others who wish to engage the candidates in more dialogue and discussion would use a different format to highlight the exact differences between them that we've highlighted to begin with, and allow them to use a different format and not follow ours, but to have a chance for candidates to have 2 or 3 minutes to have a discussion between and amongst themselves on other issues or critical issues that have been brought to light here. So we appreciate that kind of feedback as well. Another part of our night is getting questions from the press. And we're pleased to have the Lowell Sun here this evening. And if this Lowell Sun reporter could direct her questions as she desires.
My name is Prudence Bright, just so you know. The Kronos announcement last week, is there something that Chelmsford could have done to turn that around? Keep that employer here?
And the question is, so that it could be picked up, because there's not a microphone there, is the Lowell Sun has asked the candidates, I believe all 3 candidates, to respond. So we'll begin with Pat as an answer for this. Given the Kronos announcement that they would be leaving for Cross Point Tower and leaving the Chelmsford area and those buildings, the question is, could Chelmsford have done something to turn that decision around? Was there some steps that Chelmsford didn't take? So Pat, how do you respond to that?
Well, the town manager did address this Monday evening at the Board of Selectmen meeting, and he said, and I believe that they did everything they could. The town manager, the economic development director, everybody in town made every effort to convince Kronos to stay in town. It's unfortunate, but sometimes a business like that does decide to at least explore opportunities where else, other places they could have their headquarters. We've seen it with GE, we've seen it with a lot of other companies. So I do believe every effort was made. We've learned a lot from those discussions on how we can move forward. As Glenn suggested, possibly an overlay district in that area, possibly other criteria that we can set to help bring other companies here. So it shouldn't be seen as that much of it is a loss to Chelmsford, obviously, but they were here for 16 years. They have they have a warm feeling about Chelmsford, and I'm convinced they will continue to help in the community.
All right, and Sandy, could you answer that question, please?
I was speaking with the Economic Development Director, Evan Belansky, today, and he assured me, because that was one of the main things I wanted to discuss with him, that he feels it'll be filled within a year or less, that it's not going to be a big economic problem for Chelmsford for a very long time. It's something that's going to turn over quickly. I don't see how they could have done anything more. I agree with what Pat said. I've talked to Paul Cohen as well, and they've done everything they could to keep them.
Glenn?
I attended the Board of Selectmen meeting, as did the other candidates, when Paul explained all the efforts that the town did to try to woo the decision their way. And I believe that was true. But I also believe that there was absolutely no way that the town was ever going to keep Kronos here. Kronos is a $1 billion company. They want to be a $2 billion company. They want their names 15 stories high, right on Route 3, as advertising going up and down that highway. That deal, I believe, was done long ago. It may not have been announced. And that, the town did their best efforts, but really, it wasn't going to happen no matter what.
All right, thank you. Does the Lowell Sun have another question for our candidates, please? Not at this point. We also have questions from the public that our committee has gathered and reviewed, so we'll try to turn to one of those. Again, this is somewhat related to the Kronos issue. and has to deal with zoning on Route 129. Local businesses were encouraged to work on the revitalization of the center district, strongly encouraged by the town. Now there's a discussion again, about rezoning 129 to attract restaurants and other retail businesses. Now, as a disclaimer, the Chelmsford Business Association doesn't have a position on the zoning article, if there is such an article, because it has members on both sides of that debate, and hasn't taken a policy review stand as yet. We'll have to wait for that to develop. But what we asked the candidates is, what do you think the town should do? How do you balance having encouraged local businesses to invest thousands of dollars into Center District and to make improvements to keep it revitalized, and then to completely change the landscape and introduce an overlay district or a zoning redistricting to allow for competitive uses? How do you balance those? And let's begin the question with Sandy.
That's a hard question, I think.
I think it is too, that's why you wrote it.
I think the town's found itself in a quandary, and I don't know that they're going to be able to find a solution easily. I'm not exactly sure how long the overlay is. I understand it goes from, I don't know who could answer that. I've been trying to find out exactly where this overlay is going to be if it happens, from what point in Chelmsford down to how far down.
Well, as that discussion, let's do a follow-up to that then perhaps and rephrase it for you. In the event that there was an article brought forth by the planning board or some other board in town or a community member group, do you think it's appropriate now to what we call change horses to the local businesses that have already invested in the center district to say, okay, we've asked you to make all this investment, we've asked you to be supportive of the community, and now we're going to change policy and allow a whole nother area to be redeveloped into fresh new businesses. Is that a positive thing for the town or not? What's your opinion then, really? What do you think?
Without studying it, my initial reaction is it's not necessarily a positive, because I feel that we have so much growth. That's been one of my complaints, one of my issues, is that we're getting so overdeveloped. But on the other hand, if it's going to help Chelmsford in its tax base and have more business tax coming in, then it might make sense to do it. I think you need to find out from the people who are going to be affected by it.
Okay, thank you very much. Pat? I'm sorry, Glenn, I apologize.
I'm totally in favor of opening up the 129 area. I think that if you think of 129 corridor as a small tabletop pie, I think we need to make it a giant Mrs. Smith's pie. That we bring in more people, more business, that can support more restaurants or more amenities. You won't affect the downtown, which is drawing on X pie of a certain size. You're bringing in more that will support more. At the same time, I think if you're going to bring amenities there, the local business who have existed already should have first shot at maybe opening up a satellite location there. And if they decide not to, then you open it up to someone else.
Thank you very much. Pat, what's your viewpoint?
I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive, what you mentioned, as far as, allowing some amenities out on the 129 corridor and the revitalization of Central Square. I think I would encourage both to go forward, and we're also revitalizing Vinyl Square. So, if you're going to talk about 129 having a negative impact on Central Square, then probably Vinyl Square revitalization would have a negative impact too. So I think any improvements we make in a town helps the town overall. I mean, I think one example of that is with restaurants. Look at all the great restaurants we have in town, and we're going to get probably before the summertime 2 or 3 more good ones too, and we never seem to have any problem with people patronizing those restaurants. So I think that same situation would follow through, and I don't see a negative if we're helping one area. I don't see it as hurting another area.
All right, let me do a somewhat of a follow-up to that question with regards to just zoning in general, and given my line of work and experience with it. Do you believe that the town zoning map and district should be substantially revised, given that if a homeowner has a home, and we'll use the Westlands as an example, and they have a lot that's the equivalent of 3/4 of an acre, if for them to do any kind of improvement, expansion, et cetera, they're zoned in such a way that they're required to go for special permits or variances, which is very costly. It creates revenue for the town in terms of filing fees, but it's costly to the homeowner. Do you see that there's a need for redistricting and such? Recognize that, for example, the Westlands are generally half-acre lots or perhaps even smaller. Similarly with North Chelmsford. Do you believe that there's a need for complete rezoning and the rezoning map to be done? Let's begin with Glenn.
I would disagree with that. I would think that if a homeowner wants to expand his property, as long as he lives with the setbacks that are dictated by the town, I think he should be basically streamlined to do it. I mean, naturally he has to conform to any building codes or any other codes of any type for electrical or plumbing or anything else. But having lived there, and I think they should be able to go forward and do it more easily.
So in that instance, then, that you would ask for a revision of the bylaw because every homeowner is forced to go through the ZBA if they wish to do some type of an addition almost to their home.
Yes, as long as they meet all the codes that are specified.
Okay, so we'd have to look at the setbacks. You'd consider a revision to the setbacks,
Yes.
perhaps. Okay. Pat, what's your viewpoint on that?
That is an interesting concept, and it's one that I would definitely encourage some study of. It's I hadn't really thought of it that way as far as somebody with a smaller lot having less ability really to do anything on their lot, to put in a swimming pool or a shed or something like that, depending on what area of town you live in. So I would definitely encourage some study of that.
All right. Sandy, your viewpoints.
My initial reaction is like Pat's. I would want to study it more. I know a lot of people in town who have gone to the Zoning Board of Appeals because they want to put an addition on or something closer to the border, and they've been granted them, so it's not a hard process for them. So I would have to study and see what benefit there would be by changing it before I would vote or consider changing it.
Okay, thank you. We received one of these questions from our audience members that are present tonight. And it's an interesting question. Are you the type of selectman that studies a problem and votes for the best interest of the town of Chelmsford? Or do you really gauge it based on the most calls or emails that you receive? Does that really influence your decision-making? The sheer number of calls or emails? So let's begin that with, we'll begin with Pat on this, please.
Well, I would hope that I would always be the person, a selectman that would decide based on what's best for the town of Chelmsford. But having said that, I would also listen to the calls and the emails that I would get, because sometimes residents can bring up issues and some areas of discussion that you don't consider. But one example of that is a question that was asked earlier about a vote that the board took that I would disagree with, that being the Regional Emergency Call Center. I know that most of the calls and emails that the sitting board did receive were against it, but I think that was because one particular lobbying group, small L lobbying group, wanted it one way. So I think sometimes you run that risk too. All the emails and calls might be people who all feel one way, and you really have to evaluate all sides before making a decision.
Sandy, your response to the question?
I pretty much agree with Pat on this. I feel that you're elected by the people. You're there to represent the people in town and also to do a good job. I want to thank Chelmsford Telemedia and the Chelmsford Business Association for sponsoring the forum, and Chelmsford Telemedia for making it available to the viewers. I promise you, the people of Chelmsford, that I will only serve for 2 or 3 terms. I'm making a commitment to term limit myself. It comes together that everywhere. Finally, I want to give the town manager credit for his leadership. When I go to town hall to pay a tax bill or get my dog's license, the people at the town clerk's office are, as in many other offices in there, are so polite, so helpful, so responsive. I think that reflects back positively on the town manager, because he sets the tone for his people. I want to thank you for being here tonight. I thank the people at home for watching, and I respectfully ask for one of your 2 votes on April 5th.
Thank you, Sandy. Let's now give Glenn a chance to give his closing statement.
When the going gets tough, the tough get going. Yes, we have had many situations in the past couple of years in Chelmsford that have been nagging. School budget problems, loss of major employers, neighboring towns building, for example, a new high school in Billerica and the bragging rights that go along with that. But we need to start raising our heads, and we have much to be proud of. We need to have a spring in our step. We need to have a swagger in our walk and a confident smile on our faces, because together we can achieve much. You know, the best years for Chelmsford can be ahead of us. We need to raise additional funds, not through residential, but through economic development. You know, my name is Glenn Diggs. I hope you consider me for one of your 2 votes for selectman. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. And Pat, your closing statement.
Okay. Thanks, Doug, and thanks to the Chelmsford Business Association for hosting this forum. You know, my earlier comment was not meant as a dig as far as the format. It is important to have at least one debate of this format, so I applaud the Chelmsford Business Association being the first ones to do that. And thank you for everybody that came out this evening. It's nice to look out and see some friendly faces in the audience. My name is Pat Wojcik. I've served on the board before. On day 1, I can be an effective member of the Board of Selectmen. I work well with other members of the board. I'm able to reach consensus. I'm pretty much a lifelong resident of Chelmsford. I know the issues that have come up in the town, and I'm willing to do the work that it takes to resolve them. So I respectfully ask for one of your 2 votes for selectmen on Election Day, April 5th. Thank you.
Let's congratulate our selectmen candidates. We encourage everyone to vote on April 2nd in the town elections. April 5th, I apologize, April 5th.
I thought I was given the wrong date.
It's been a very long week, that's all I can tell you. It's been a long
Say
month,
we all get the wrong date.
especially. And what I would like everybody to do is, again, be mindful, participate, go to forums, raise questions, talk to the candidates, influence them as best as you can to bring out the best. On behalf of the Chelmsford Business Association, thank you for attending, thank you candidates for participating, and have a very nice evening. Thank you.